Adina, if I want to understand consciousness, I have to deal with free will, decisions, intentions. So I'm trying to get a handle on these different concepts. So let's deal with decision-making and free will. How do the two relate to each other?
Well, I think decision-making is something that you can have, first of all, without consciousness. Right? You can have a purely non-minded algorithmic machine that makes decisions. But I think that what we think of when we think of making free decisions is there's some aspect of consciousness involved in those, but it's really not clear what aspect of consciousness is important for a decision to be free, or what other things are important for a decision to be free. Because some people think that decisions have to be indeterministic or self-authored in a way that you couldn't possibly have been caused by anything else, or other things that are very hard to understand in order for them to be free. But I think that the common sense notion of free will has something at least to do with consciousness and responsibility. Now, it's possible that you could even be free, make free decisions unconsciously, and a lot of social psychology seems to suggest that we freely make decisions that we're not necessarily conscious of as we're making them. But responsibility, it seems, is really linked much more closely to consciousness. It's hard to imagine holding somebody responsible for something that they didn't know that they were doing or weren't conscious of.
So now we're adding another complexity, which is the morality, the legal side. So you have really a contiguous series of concepts that are somehow linked, but not entirely.
Yeah. I think we're still struggling with how all of these somewhat related concepts hold together, which ones are more closely related to other ones.
So let's start with, let's take free will as the core.
Okay.
So if we settled on free will, what can we say about decisions? You've said that decisions could be made without free will because in one sense, every computer is making decisions. You can have different algorithms in computers and they do things. You put in possibilities and decisions come out that are prefixed by algorithms.
Right.
But those are not free as we would calculate. You could even put in random numbers, but then that is to make decisions. But then that is sort of determined in a random way. I mean,
right.
Yeah.
So I mean that I think is what indeterminism is. It's some element of randomness that will push your decision one way or another. And people who are libertarians about free will, who think that in order for us to be free, we have to be undetermined, essentially have to make peace with the notion that there's some random element that you as the agent have no control over, that is making it the case that you decide to do A rather than B.
But why would then randomness be any more making a free decision than determinism?
That is an excellent question, which I don't see an answer to, but the people who are libertarians about free will just accept that it is.
Well, there's a different concept, the concept of openness. Openness is not the same thing as randomness.
That's true, except it's, if your question is, are you in a deterministic universe,
right,
or not?
Right, that's question one.
Right, that's question one. If you say no, then the universe is indeterministic. And you might need that for openness, but the openness comes at the price of indeterminism. I don't see any
right.
way.
But can you have an openness that is not generated by a randomness?
I don't believe you can.
Okay, so that's an important kind of critical question, because if you cannot have openness without randomness,
right,
without chance, call it luck, whatever you want,
right,
then I'm not sure I see a difference between a deterministic and an indeterministic universe as opposed relative to making free will choices.
I completely agree with you. So what you do gain is you get the robust possibility of things could have been different, right? Things could have been otherwise,
right.
And you can say that without any complexity.
Right.
Whereas if you believe in determinism, you have to give some kind of a philosophical account of what that means.
You have a unique position with doctorates in both neuroscience and in philosophy, so you're on both sides of this war.
Yeah, I guess I am.
You have relatives on both sides of this
Except
war.
I wouldn't characterize the war as a war between the philosophers and the neuroscientists.
Oh, I like war. I like that.
I think that
we shouldn't be too friendly.
No, I think that's not it at all. I actually think that there are pretty strong contingents of compatibilists in both the philosophical camp and the neuroscientific camp. And compatibilists are people who think that you can be free or have free will or have free action in a deterministic universe.
Yeah, what they're doing is they're degrading the notion of free will.
That's very contentious.
Right.
I think it is the notion of free will, and everything else
is bloated.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so that's fair. So
but there's a price to pay no matter which.
So you're a compatibilist.
I'm a compatibilist.
Right. Yeah. So you live in a deterministic.
With flickers of libertarian intuition, but no, I'm a compatibilist.
And so you live in a deterministic universe where everything that happened had a cause, and you can trace all the causes back, and ultimate intelligence could figure it all out, probabilistically or over.
I have to stop you because I don't live in that universe either.
Oh, okay.
I'm completely agnostic.
Oh, okay.
I think it is possible that the universe isn't deterministic. It's possible that it's indeterministic. But whatever account of free will I can give, or anyone can give, it should be compatible with both of those possibilities.
Okay, but your free will would be different in different kinds of your two different universes. You're saying, well, however it works. However the universe works, free will is my core value, and I'm going to keep it. If it has to be a little bit bloated or a little bit shrunken, I don't really care. You're not saying that.
I'm not saying that.
You want to tell me what you're saying?
The difference is what I think is that the account of free will cannot hinge on the question of determinism or indeterminism.
Oh, that's a very significant
point.
So
whichever way it goes, the account should stand up. And so I'm not saying that the universe has to be deterministic. I'm not saying it has to be indeterministic. What I'm saying is that whatever explanation I'm going to give you for why I choose freely, why I'm responsible for my decisions, etc., it's not going to make reference to the fact that the Big Bang caused me to do something, and it's not going to make reference to any indeterministic blip in my brain.
Yes, but wouldn't the fact that you're defining free will in a way so that it wouldn't matter which way, by its very nature, making you defining free will at a lower common denominator than someone else? You have to do that.
I don't think so. I think free will is a macroscopic kind of phenomenon that you don't need to make reference to those micro-physical details in order to give an account of. And if you're going down that far, I think you've got the wrong account.
So you're looking at a higher macroscopic level, a more of a brain level. And so how is your brain structure, mind, compatible with this kind of free will? Do you need anything going on in the brain that's indeterministic? Or you're saying you don't know, you don't care?
It might be indeterministic and it might not, and that question isn't going to be relevant to my story for why we're free.
And that's not a common approach.
I don't think it is.
Okay, and how do you defend that? You defend that by creating your free will on such a macroscopic level that everything else washes out?
No.
You got to defend it for me.
It's not my free will. It's my account of free will.
That's fine.
And I'm just saying that when I give an account of why my choices are free or responsible, I don't need to make reference to that ultimately low level of event. I'm going to make reference to things like reasons, desires, preferences, other kinds of mental states. I'm going to make reference to maybe some mechanisms of decision making that we find out from neuroscience. But those don't take sides on the question of determinism or indeterminism either. And I would say most compatibilists actually don't require that determinism be true. They just, what the position says is that determinism is compatible with freedom, but it doesn't say, and it has to be determinism. There are people who have said that you have to, that in an indeterministic world you couldn't be free, that freedom requires determinism, but most compatibilists are open about that. So I don't think I'm that far off, but I think at least my work has sort of jumped off from the point that you don't need to answer the question of determinism or indeterminism if what you're interested in is free will. I think that answer, especially if you're a neuroscientist or interested in neuroscience, I think that answer is not coming from neuroscience. So if you want to give a brain-based account of free will, you can skip that question and start thinking about the things that we actually have access to, like representations and reasons and desires, motivation, things like that.